to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundi, we got two more teams that we'll be covering in this episode this week. We got the Vancouver Canucks for you, and I've got the Buffalo Sabres. We've got no news around the league really, so
we have none.
Yeah,
There's absolutely nothing happening right now of anything. So I'm so glad we at least have this on the go, because we would have nothing. There'd be absolutely nothing for us to even talk about. We just have to make up stuff.
Yeah. With that said, do you have a preference? Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
I'll start us off today.
All right.
I'll start us off here with the Vancouver Canucks, a team that, in my opinion, I think a lot of people's opinion, surprised a lot of people last year. I thought they had they just exceeded like all the expectations that were set out for them last year. And I mean, they took the Oilers, who won the West in the end. They took them to a Game 7, and not only that, they were actually up in that series 3-2 1 point. They kind of had Edmonton on the ropes.
Yeah, they gave Edmonton a really good run over in the Western Conference, and I mean, Edmonton at the end was one goal away from potentially winning the cup. So this is definitely a team that you could look at as on the cusp of being a championship team.
Well, you think about it, Edmonton was one goal away from, tying the game up and potentially winning the cup, even though, it's not the way we really remember the Game 7 between Vancouver and Edmonton, because Edmonton, I mean, they were up 3-0 and kind of dominated quite a good chunk of that game. But it's like it was still, it ended up being a 1-goal game. So same way as Edmonton was 1 goal away from potentially beating Florida. Same thing with the Canucks. They had opportunities to tie the game, and if they went to overtime, anything can happen. So they were right there this year, and depends which way you want to look on it for whether they got better or worse. But before that, just kind of recapping this past season for the Canucks, they had a regular season record of 50 wins, 23 regulation losses, and then 9 overtime shootout losses. If you're bad at math, that is 109 points. First in the Pacific. They won their division, in a division that had an Edmonton team and a Vegas team that a lot of people were super high on going into last year. I mean, obviously Vegas being the defending Cup champs, and then Edmonton, where everyone's always been high on them for the last couple of years, it seems. So for the Canucks to come out on top, that's pretty that's pretty dang good for them.
Yeah, and I think they finally this past year kind of took that next step that a lot of people have been expecting them to take for like several years at this point. They've just got so much talent on that team that it felt weird that year in year out they were fighting for a wild card 2 spot or something like that. Like they just the amount of top end talent they got in guys like Quinn Hughes, Elise Pettersson, JT Miller, Brock Besser, like it was just always crazy that they weren't putting together more solid seasons. And a lot of guys really put it together on an extra level this year. JT Miller has been an absolute stud for them. Obviously, Quinn Hughes had an incredible season, anchored with Hronik on the deep pairing. Like they put together a lot of the things that I think people have been expecting. So
and one thing that I think about a lot, because I always kind of love looking into these kind of things and following them. Some people don't, but it was just last the season prior, right before the All-Star game, the Canucks traded Bo Horvat, and that was their kind of the face of their team for quite a while, their captain, and so it was kind of like, all right, now we're kind of moving into a different era of Vancouver Canucks hockey. And it was only at the start of this past season that Quinn Hughes was named captain, and a lot of people were unsure about that, because a lot of people thought Elias Pettersson, some people even thought JT Miller. And they went with Quinn Hughes, and that kind of surprised a lot of people. But I mean, his first year, they went to the second round, Game 7. They won their division, and Quinn Hughes won a Norris. Like, he's not only did he have great individual success and showed like there was no pressure of being the captain, no extra weight added onto him. He had a fantastic year, and the team as a whole had a hell of a year from what was, a lot of people kind of projected for them. So that's somebody also that, I don't think gets talked about enough is, how dominant Quinn Hughes was at elevating this team and getting them
Yeah,
over the next hurdle that was in front of them.
yeah. He, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell, was him being captain a massive part of that? Like, because it definitely could have been, or, maybe it was just they put together a bit better of a team. Hronik was massive in helping him be able to do what he can on that first
Oh,
defensive pair.
Hronik was was
But
was definitely huge for Quinn Hughes this year.
yeah,
100%.
I think a lot of guys on their team had I don't want to say career years as in that'll be their best, but like a lot of them had the best season of their career so far.
Yeah. Yeah. Like they had a great year as a whole for them. And then also just looking at goals for and against, 279 goals for per game. So that was good for seventh in the league. And then goals against 223. That was good for fifth. So not only were they top 10 in goals for, but they were top 5 for goals against. And that's, if you're good at putting the puck in and keeping it out of your net, you're going to generate a lot of team success there.
Yeah, I mean, so we were talking about how good they were in the playoffs. They did basically all of it on their third string goalie. Like
Yeah.
Demko went down, and then who was their backup? Was it
Casey
Chari?
DeSmith.
Casey DeSmith.
Casey DeSmith.
And then he went down, so they were right in Artur Silovs, who did a great
Didn't hurt
job.
him. Didn't
Like
hurt him.
he did not cost them anything. But obviously he's no Thatcher Demko, and
Yeah.
especially Thatcher Demko in the playoffs, who we've seen can really rise to the occasion. So if they
Yeah.
get back next year with a fully healthy team, they could be a solid pick to win the cup next year and end Canada's Stanley Cup drought.
Yeah. 100%. And even just to further go into how, you know, big of a step forward the Canucks took this year and defied expectations. To start the last season, their over under on point totals for their team was set at 90.5. So, for anyone who's not super into betting or anything, basically it's, are they going to get 91 points or more, or are they going to have 90 points or less? They ended up with 109. So, 18
Smashed it.
over there for that. So that's like, that's 9 whole wins that they got that, the projections weren't on their side for. So, and we'll kind of dive into, what happened with their kind of team this offseason. Obviously losing some big names, but also kind of bringing in some big names. Obviously, the notable losses for them is we're talking about Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov are kind of the two big losses that the Canucks are trying to come back from. But
Yeah.
I mean, you look at it, we kind of talked about it before. They were already the top team in the Pacific Division prior to acquiring those guys.
Yeah,
Like
those
the
were
Canucks
both
really had
rentals.
us. Yeah, they had us strangled on the top spot in the Pacific for a good portion of the season. And so it's like, yeah, they're, again, it sucks losing guys like that, especially with, kind of how critical and important Zadorov was for them in the playoffs. Those were guys that they didn't have at the start of last season. They were guys that they didn't have when they were still top of the Pacific. They were just add-ons. So, I mean, we know that the team they had before the two of them could get it done. And I mean, I still thought that it was great that they were able to find a way to trade Mikheyev's contract, because that was kind of taking up a good chunk of their salary in a time when they needed every little bit of cap space that they could get, I would say.
Yeah, I think getting up from that is going to help.
Massive.
And I don't believe, yeah, they have very little cap space going into next year. So I think this is what they have is the roster they're rolling with. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, Yeah, unfortunately, they don't really have any extra cap space if they want to make a move at the deadline. At
Yeah.
least,
So here,
they'd have to
so
move somebody out.
yeah. So here's a couple things because I will kind of dive into these some of these contracts and give a quick solution on how I see it end up playing out for the Canucks. Um, so like losing Lindholm, Sidorov, sure, it sucks, whatever. But there's a lot of guys that it kind of seemed like they were going to lose, and they found a way to keep them. It started off Teddy Bluger signing a 2-year deal, 1.8 AAV. That's a great fourth line center to have. Potentially could slot in on the third line. I think he is capable of playing those minutes, and just playing his game, good defensive game on the third line. That's fine. The big one, Dakota Joshua, who really kind of elevated his game and burst out this year. 63 games played, 18 goals, 14 assists, 32 points. Playing as a bottom six guy. I think he kind of got stints on the second line, but for the most part was third line. And then
Yeah,
Tyler Myers, 3 years, 3 million AAV. Uh, you know, people say Tyler Myers is bad, but it's like take Tyler Myers and separate him from the contract he was on. Was he getting overpaid? Sure. But is he like a horrible, bad defenseman? No. And so having him now for only 3 mil per year, I think is okay. I don't think that hurts the Canucks as bad as his deal was before.
no, like honestly, I think it's a good deal at this point. 3 mil is not a ton of cap space, and
Especially with the cap going up.
yeah, and he is 29 points last year in 77 games. Like
And he's not
he
out there to put up points either. He's
exactly
out there to play a physical, good defensive game, which
that's just
is holes
complimentary.
too, but yeah.
So yeah, him playing 19 minutes of ice time a night, a plus 16, like he's not hurting them. He's
No, definitely not.
at a glance, it kind of looks like second on the team in shot blocks. Looks like he was maybe a bit lower on hits. Looks like he's probably around fifth or sixth, but he's goes out there, he plays a solid defensive game uh most of the time, and he's chipping in a decent bit of offense for a guy that's not really the selling point of his game. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
think the days of complaining
completely agree.
about him because of his contract are pretty over.
Yeah. And then so that's it. Lose some guys, but they did bring in or did manage to keep some of their current guys that they had that, I think some of them are pretty important to this, not only the team, but also in the locker room. And then a couple of the smaller additions before the bigger ones. Vinny Desharnais and Derek Forbert. Desharnais a 2-year deal, Forbert a 1, both making or Desharnais, sorry, 2-year deal, 2 million AAV per year, and then Derek Forbert's a 1x1. That's just good, solid signing for your bottom pair. Like neither of these guys are slotting into their top 4. It's just depth for your bottom pair and your seventh defenseman. So and neither of these are an overpay, so that I don't think that hurts the Canucks for their defensive problems. I think those are guys that can slot in and do what's asked of them, I would say, by the coach based
Yeah,
on kind of their presence.
yeah, yeah. I definitely think that's just extra depth. Injury depth, playoff depth as well. Like
Yeah, and
I don't
then
mind it.
yeah, and then a couple of just kind of more so depth forward signings. Danton Heinen 2-year deal, 2.25 AV, and then Kiefer Sherwood 2 years at a 1.5 AV. That's just adding more to your bottom six, just a little bit more depth and kind of more defensive minded players where you're off your top six and 2/3 of your third line have no problem getting the offense done. You just need solid defensive guys to round it out. I think two great choices in guys like this as well.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I Yeah, like they like you said, they lost those two big pieces in the free agency, but honestly,
Yeah.
that's they kind of had to lose those guys, and they knew that grabbing
Yeah.
them. But I love almost every pickup that they got. Like all
It's a
these
lot of
guys
good
that they brought
ones.
in were really good. You know, Daniel Sprong for pennies on the dollar. Like
Yeah, and we
they,
haven't got into Sprong, right? That's what the next, kind of the last two are, is the two big ones. Daniel Sprong, 1 year, 975,000 Davy, so not even making a mill. And then obviously the big one, which we did kind of discuss a little bit last episode when looking at the Bruins, but Jake DeBrusk. Uh, it was kind of rumored well before free agency that he was going to be going to Edmonton, and then all of a sudden it was like, no, there's a deal, and he's going to go to Calgary for sure. So, going into free agency, that first day, everybody's kind of waiting, like, all right, which is real? Where's DeBrusk going to go? Because he's an Alberta boy, so everybody thought there's rumors to both teams that were allegedly leaked. Which one does he actually pick? It was kind of the Jacob Markstrom, saga all over again after he left Vancouver, and then sure enough, DeBrusk signs with Vancouver, 7 years at 5.5 for his AV. That's a great deal. That's
great contract.
that's so good for the Canucks. I can't even express how much I like that deal.
I very easily could have seen him getting the same exact term for 6.25 in Calgary, in Vancouver.
Potentially even 6.5. Like,
yeah,
he could have gotten more, but I think he wanted to go to the Canucks.
Yeah.
Like, taking that deal, I think he sees a path to win. But not only that, he sees a path where he can be a legit top six guy and a go-to guy for them and play some big minutes. And, just looking at his last two seasons, the prior season, 64 games, 27 goals, 50 points, plus 26. And then last year with the Bruins, 80 games played, 19 goals, 40 points, plus 4. But in the playoffs, we talked about it with the Bruins. He led the team in playoff scoring for them. 13 games played, 5 goals, 6 assists for 11 points. So, you're getting a guy that's, I think, has the potential to. I mean, the season prior, 64 games played, 50 points. Like, this is a guy that has the potential to be an 80-point guy if he's playing on the wing with Pettersson, and when he's got Quinn Hughes back there.
Yeah.
And if you're only paying him 5.5, and he plays a good two-way game.
Yeah, he's not just a one-dimensional guy either.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a home run signing by the Canucks there.
In my opinion doesn't matter much. We know this, but in my opinion, that was the best contract signed for a free agent on day one of free agency. Not talking about contract extensions, because there was a really good one out there, but just in terms of signing, like a raw free agent signing, I think that one's my favorite for both. Well, from a team perspective, for that team, that's tidy work there. And then the only other really move is July 16th, the Canucks signed Shelovs to a 2-year deal, bringing him back $850,000 per year. So, they lose Casey DeSmith, but that's fine because you've got Shelovs who can come in now and be your backup, and he's capable of it. And 2-year deal. So same as Demko, they're both on 2-year deals now. And between the two of them, like, you've got a pairing of Demko and Shelovs, and you're paying them under $6 million. That's tidy work. That's tidy work by the Canucks there. To have two goaltenders like that under $6 million.
Yeah, that's pretty good, and
pretty fucking good.
I love that contract structure for Shelovs as well, because he just put together a great showing as an AHL starter, essentially hopping into the NHL playoffs. If he's very solid as a backup this year, like as soon as that next year hits, he's gonna be generating interest.
Well, here's the thing:
they're either gonna want to trade him and try and get something back because they're not going to be keeping him. They got Demko, or they could offer a long-term extension. But
I was gonna say, because in 2 years, if Demko goes down again, Shelovs comes in and is a stud again, They're both on 2-year deals. By the time that is, Demko's going to be 30. I'm probably looking for a long-term deal. And you've got Shelovs, who's 25, who's if he got a long-term deal, he would sign that shit. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a chance within 2 years we're looking at it, and there might be a new starting goalie for the Canucks potentially. I don't expect it to happen, but
yeah,
there's always a chance. We've seen stuff like that happen before.
Yeah, I think he'd have to come in and be like game-breakingly like stealing them several games.
The only way it would happen is if like Demko went down with a long-term injury. Like he went down and he's missing like multiple months or something. And Shelovs comes in and is a complete stud throughout all of it. Like everything would need to align for it to happen, but I'm throwing it out there because if it does happen, I can cut this and say, hey, I was the very first person to say that. The only other thing with the Canucks, before we kind of dive into the lines and just kind of look at some of the players, is the biggest issue they have is so the Mikheyev retained money. That's fine, like $712,000. It's not ideal, but you know what? You had to retain some to get rid of him. Whatever. The thing with the Canucks is Oliver Ekman-Larsson, his buyout, 2.346. They're paying him this year, which goes towards their cap. The problem is, after this year, the next 2 seasons, it jumps up to 4.76.
Yeah.
So
it's
doubling. It's doubling all of a sudden. And so now, I'm assuming the cap goes up. Okay, sure, whatever. It helps a little bit, but it's also like when you've got a guy like you've got a Brock Besser, who is a UFA at the end of next year. You're going to have to sign him. And if he does what he did last year or does better, you're going to be paying him more than 6.65.
Yeah.
Whoa. Wow. All right. I found my new favorite. I was going back and forth between multiple different sites on, looking at contracts and all this. Cap wages. Man, I just noticed they had an update at some point recently here. It's looking a lot like cap friendly in terms of how you can view draft picks and contracts. And so if you're looking for a replacement now from cap friendly, look at cap wages, because this new update, it's looking a lot like
cap wages,
like cap friendly. Yeah, I wasn't even paying attention to the top, but then looked and I was just wanting to look at their draft picks and find it. And I was like, shit, it's all right there. Like it's a one-stop shop. You click on the team, you go in, you can see all their draft picks, all of their contracts, everything. And not only that, at the very bottom, they got a fun thing where you can, and I don't even think Cap Friendly didn't even have this. You scroll way down to the bottom, you can see all their unsigned players. So you can see all of the prospects and unsigned guys that they have in their system that are still coming up in future years. So cap wages, give yourself a round of applause. This is very, very nice. Makes my life so much easier trying to go through these teams and look at the hellhole some teams have put themselves in.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it if I can see it anywhere here, but I can't confirm it. But I was relatively certain that cap wages was one of the websites that was actually made by people who used to work at Cap Friendly. I'm not sure which people, if they were like recent people or what, but
yeah,
I was pretty sure that it was. And I mean, yeah, this looks near identical.
Yeah, it's actually more condensed. Maybe it's probably just because Cap Friendly just had a shit ton of ads, but like you're on here and you're just scrolling and it's just boom, everything right here for you. But anyways, so Canucks kind of rough situation with what's going to happen with Oliver Ekman-Larsson's buyout and going up. We will get into kind of how maybe they could fix that. In terms of the draft picks, this year they have all their own picks. They have nobody else's pick, but they do not have their third round pick. So Canucks got a lot of ammo if they decide they want to make a move again, but I don't fully expect them to. But should we get into the lines here? Into the
Yes.
nitty-gritty of what the Canucks got in store. So,
yeah, who are they
and,
icing?
and again, these are all projected lines. These are obviously, there's nothing confirmed. This is just what they're projected to be. And I think there's a move. I think there's a player on here, or that's not on here, that I think might find themselves on here. But looking at the first line, Nils Höglander, Brock Besser, centered by J.T. Miller. That's not fantastic. I'm not gonna lie. That's not. It's mostly hurting because of the Nils Höglander there.
I was gonna say, I'm trying to think. Like, do we think that's actually what they're rolling with? Do you think he actually plays on that?
When I'm kind of looking at the breakdown of the team, I kind of think so, potentially. But here's the thing, right? Is Nils Höglander, he, when he first broke into the league, he had 2 years with the Canucks. And then last year, he spent about half the year at the Canucks and then half the year in the AHL. For a young player to have two years in the league, and then your third year, your contract year, you're down in the minors for half the year. That's not a good feeling, and that's not a good spot for a player to be in. But last year, he played 80 games, so stayed healthy. He had 24 goals and 12 assists for 36 points. So I view this almost identical to the Flyers we talked about last episode with Tyson Forrester.
Right.
A guy that it's not the super flashy name and whatnot on the first line, but it is a young player who, and I think last year was kind of Höglander's first start of breaking out in the league. I don't think he really found his game that much in his first 2 years, but like last year, I think is when it started to click. So this is a guy that, I mean, if given the opportunity on the top line there with a Miller and a Besser, like you could be looking at, 30 goals, 55, 60 points maybe. And that's
honestly, I in my mind, I had already come up with other forward lines here, at least in the top 6, that I think I would like better. But yeah,
okay.
No,
so I'll list off the second line, then I want to hear your what you got.
Well, so that's what I was thinking, but in my mind, I've already walked it back because you make such a good point. He's only 23. Like you said, 24 goals. That's a lot. 36 points. He had 12 minutes of ice time last year.
Yeah, he wasn't on the first line last year.
But like he wasn't even on the second line either. That's maybe third line.
That's third line, like second power play unit.
Yeah.
And with the Canucks, with that first line spent the majority of the power play time out there.
0 power play assists, 0 power play goals. He didn't have a power play point.
So that's all even strength. Or maybe a couple of shorties. I don't know if you can see that right away.
Doesn't look like any shorthanded points either. I don't know
he did. So that's all even strength on the third line.
It looks like it. He might have had time out there, but he doesn't have a single point from
no, but all I'm saying is like that's all even strength points he put up. Like he's not getting any. And so if he's, if you're going to give him the opportunity on the first line and maybe second power play unit, those numbers are 100% going to jump. Not only from the extra playing time and now being on the power play, but he's also playing with better players. You're playing with J.T. Miller and Brock Besser, if this is the way it goes. So, I mean, looking at it,
last year, Dakota
probably
Joshua, Teddy Bluger.
Yeah, like a Connor Garland, Dakota Joshua, maybe.
Yeah, so like that's a pretty good.
Maybe even Teddy Bluger, Dakota Joshua. Like not like still decent players, but like again, they're not JT Miller or Brock Besser.
Guys. No.
Yeah. So, it's not a super sexy name when you're looking at it right now, being like, oh, Nils Höglander first line. But by the end of next year, you could be looking like, fuck yeah, that looks good with him there.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think that's a bad pick.
Second line for the Canucks, Jake DeBrusk and Daniel Sprong, the 2 new additions. Up front for them, centered by none other than Elias Pettersson. I think that could be a fun line. You've got Jake DeBrusk who can go in there, crash and bash, get pucks loose. You've got Pettersson, who he's a dual threat. He does it all. And you've got Daniel Sprong that can rip them in. Like that's a stronger second line than they had last year, I would say.
Maybe. I'm not convinced on Daniel Sprong. I like him as a player. I don't think he should be on the second line. I think he should probably be on the third line and maybe bring up Connor Garland
Yeah, but
to play
Daniel
on that
Sprong's
second
never
line.
played with a guy like Elias Pettersson. And already looking at, the numbers he put up with Seattle 2 years ago and then Detroit, like, I don't know if he'll
No,
start on the second line, but I think he's a
I
guy that he could rack up some goals playing on that second line,
I definitely think he
especially a guy
could.
that's
I just
trying
think
to.
Garland would do more on that in that same spot. I don't think he would
So
do a ton more, but I think he would do a bit more.
potentially, yeah, but I mean, I think Garland's a play driver, right? Like he's out there, he's kind of driving the bus and generating the controlling kind of the pace for it out there, and I mean relentless on the forecheck and always getting pucks out and so I think you're bet again. I agree. Garland's probably a better fit for the second line, but I like him more on the third line, kind of him being the guy that's the driving force. Like first line, you got JT Miller, and then second line, you got Elias Pettersson. Like third line, having Connor Garland is very solid there.
I don't know. I think you gotta put your best players available in that top six. I don't think they're in a position where they can spread it out because
100% you can. You could put fucking Kiefer Sherwood with
Pettersson.
Elias Pettersson, and he's going to be a 20-goal guy.
I think they dare I say it, they have to shelter Elias Pettersson. Like this dude is not. We all know what he can be, and he's already a fantastic player, but he's not reaching that next level that people keep expecting him to. And I think putting a middle six forward with him for the sake of your third line being better, I don't.
But
think
let's
that
not
does him
act
any
like
favors.
Connor Garland's more than a middle six forward. Like he's not a second line guy on most teams. Like a lot of the the rebuilding teams, yeah. But
I think he could be a second line forward. I wouldn't. I would say he's closer to a middle six forward instead of a top six forward because he shouldn't be on your first line. He shouldn't be on your first line. But I think he could be a fine second line right winger. And he had 47 points last year, but Pettersson's a guy that year in year out we should be able to pencil in for 100 points. He had 89 points last year. Like,
hey, and I'm right there with you, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, if you're rolling out a third line of Dakota Joshua, Teddy Bluger, and Daniel Sprong, you might be in trouble. You might be in trouble if you're rolling that out for you. I would not like to see that line. I would not. No. I would not.
I think that's a
I'm not super crazy about Daniel Sprong on the second line. I don't give a shit where they put him. But I think again, I like Connor Garland. I think he would do great on the second line, but I think that third line needs him out there to control that line and be the driving force behind that line. Because I don't see Daniel Sprong as a play driver. Teddy Bluger, already talked about him. He's not out there to generate offense. He's out there to be a great two-way guy and be good at faceoffs. Dakota Joshua, really like him, but he is not a play driver. He's unfortunately, it sucks to be him. I really like him, but like a lower budget Zach Hyman. Like a kind of, go around the net and crash and bash, screen the goalie, get loose pucks and whatnot more so. So I think they need a Connor Garland on that third line. I'm not saying he is a third liner. I think he would do great on the second line, but I think the third line kind of needs him there to be that guy that gets him going.
Yeah, maybe. I worry we're gonna end up not ever seeing the full potential of Elias Pettersson because with these lineups he'd be playing with DeBrusk and Sprong, two guys he's never played with, he doesn't know, and Daniel Sprong is a pretty good offensive player, but he's never been great defensively. Pettersson obviously,
but it's the same with Brock Besser. He's not great defensively, but you have him with a JT Miller, you're fine. You're putting Sprong with Pettersson and DeBrusk. Like you don't need him to be he's he still needs to obviously play defense.
No, but now Pettersson's worrying about covering for him. Now Pedersen's worrying I have to cover for Sprong when he messes
No,
it up again.
because he's got DeBrusque. So that takes so much weight off his shoulders. I don't. Putting Daniel Sprong is not going to hinder Elias Pettersson more than
I
Connor
don't think
than if he was
it's
playing
I
with a
don't think
Connor
it's helping him.
Garland.
I think Connor Garland
No,
helps the line more. I don't think it helps their depth more, which you made a
but
great
that's the
point about
thing.
that third line.
You
But
need depth, and that's what it comes down to. Is like, and you know what? If you want it, then fucking shake it up and put Jake DeBrusque up there with Höglander and Miller, and then you put Besser and Sprong with Pettersson.
well, so my first thing that I was thinking originally, until I looked at Hoglander's numbers, and he kind of deserves to be a shot at the top line actually now, but I was thinking originally, DeBrusque, Miller, and Besser, Hoglander, Pedersen, and then whatever
Garland.
combination of Garland or Sprong.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm with you. I'm I'm hitting your joint. I'm smoking what you're smoking right now. Like, I agree, Garland is a better fit on that second line, but I'm looking at it from a depth perspective because we're seeing that you need good depth, and having good depth is why teams win now in both regular season and playoffs. And I think you need a guy, a play driver on that third line.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the way they would want to go in the playoffs, but for the regular season, I don't know how much a difference it makes with that third line, enough to off balance the difference in play we might see from Pedersen.
And I get what you're saying,
I don't watch
but
a ton of Canucks games, so.
And that's the thing is I do watch a fair amount just because usually I just they're a West Coast team, so they're usually one of the last games on when they're playing at home. So it's like, yeah, you flip it on and you're watching them play out the second, third, or whatever. But one also thing, I'm really excited to see actually how the lines shake out for these teams, because we're kind of going through the lines and trying to figure them out, and actually seeing how they end up could be pretty cool. Wrapping up for the forwards here, Danton Heinen, Kiefer Sherwood, centered by Pia Suter. That's a solid fourth line. I'm curious to what they do with Suter, because he was kind of up and down all over in the lineup, played a lot of time in the top six and whatnot. So I'm kind of curious to see, where he ends up now. Is maybe he up on that second line and Daniel Sprong's just on the fourth line or something? Because you've got Danton Heinen, Pia Suter, and Kiefer Sherwood, all guys that can play center. So, and that's a good defensive line too. So I got no complaints there. Looking at the defense, top six, pretty relatively similar for the Canucks prior to Zadorov. Quinn Hughes and Philip Pronik on the first pair, Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers on the second pair. I mean, we know how good that top pair is. We don't need to dive into that. The second pair, I don't love, but I don't hate it.
I think
I'm indifferent on it.
If they're looking at the trade deadline to upgrade, I think it's probably a top four defenseman.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too. Yeah, like that's the area that needs the most help. And then third pair, again, guys we talked about, just those depth signings. Derek Forbort and Vinny Desharnais. That's just a shutdown pair. Like, don't expect them to be out there creating offense or getting offensive chances. They're out there to just shut the other team down and play a good defensive game.
Yeah, and that's all you're ever going to need from your third defensive pairing. Like, I've seen a weird amount of teams with like two almost like offensive defensemen on their third D line. And I'm kind of wondering, like, what's the game here? Are you going to be playing them like 7 minutes a night and like really trying to line match them perfectly and see if you can like get a sneaky bounce or something? Like, there's not a lot of them, but I've seen a couple of teams. It's like their fifth, sixth, and seventh defensemen are all, kind of one-dimensional scoring defensemen, but they, Erik Karlsson can get away with it because he can score a lot of freaking points. If you're an offensive defenseman scoring 20 points a year, it's a bit more of a niche.
Yeah, exactly, right. And then obviously we already talked about the goaltenders, Demko and Shilovs. that's totally fine, and that's not a tandem. That is Demko's a starter, and Shilov's is a great backup.
Yeah.
One thing with the forwards is, so he's not listed on here, but I think there's a good chance that Lekaramaki could potentially make the jump and make the team next year. I think he could be a great addition actually on that second line. Like if you got him with DeBrusk and Pettersson, and you put Lekaramaki there, I think that could definitely that could be a lot of fun for the Canucks, and I think could actually prove to be quite successful. Other than that, the only thing is like looking at their cap situation and where they're at. You know, we don't know whether the cap's going to go up or down. And with Ekman-Larsson's buyout is the Brock Besser contract. And, you know, if he does what he did last year, even better, he's in for a big payday. And I think, I don't know, but I think if they are having trouble signing him and need to open up money, I think Connor Garland's the guy that gets moved out.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
I think that's what happens, because
he kind of has to be. You know, obviously, you're not moving a guy like Pettersson or Miller for cap space. And if they have a chance to bring Besser back, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Him over Garland.
Yeah, and like you're not moving DeBrusk out,
somehow a year younger too.
Yeah, it's like you're not moving DeBrusk out. You just signed him. You're not moving out Quinn Hughes or Philip Hronek. Like, you know, you're not. Yeah, it's just like, as much as they love Garland, the fans do, he would unfortunately just be the casualty because he's making a sizable amount of money, and you're not choosing him over Brock Besser.
Yeah, depending on how much money they need to move out, I could see them moving out a Danton Heinen instead. Because he's.
I don't know if Danton Heinen. I don't think he moves the needle enough, though. Potentially.
Yeah, it would probably have to be him and somebody else.
And even so, then you're moving out Danton Heinen to re-sign Brock Besser, but then it's like, okay, we still have. Then you have absolutely no money to even improve your team at during free agency or anything. You basically just have to run it back with the exact same group almost.
Which, you kind of reap what you sow with the Oliver Ekman-Larsson buyout. Like they were.
Yeah, that's one that's going to haunt the Canucks a bit.
They're 1 year away from that big contract.
All of those guys' contracts expiring, and they made that deal. You had to get Ekman-Larsson and Garland in. While Garland's worked out, Ekman-Larsson, throughout his entire span, even when he's no longer with the team, is still hurting the Canucks way more than he's helping them or ever did.
Did we mention Tucker Poolman at all? Just because he's listed.
Was he still with the team?
Yes. He's
so then there you go. Because I was gonna dive into being like, oh, they need to get a 7th, but I said fuck it. Oh, so there you go.
Yeah,
so Tucker Poolman probably slots in on the third pair when healthy, and then you rotate, Forbert and Darnay in and out or something like that. So that actually does kind of make the Canucks D look a little bit better than actually.
Yeah.
But that's all we have for the Canucks here. To wrap it up with them before we move on to the Sabres, our big two, are the Canucks a playoff team?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much yes.
Not only are they a good team, they are in by far the worst division in the league.
Yeah,
so
they have
that's a
solid chance
no-brainer
at winning their division. I think they probably come in second in their division, if I had to guess. But they could,
I mean, second and first they're both right there for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Canucks, we both say playoff team. Yes, that's probably the consensus amongst most people. And then one singular player, individual award. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I will let you go first.
Okay.
Your team you're talking about here.
It's tough because there's no there's like the one obvious.
There's a couple options, but it's tough to get away from that one rather obvious one.
Yeah, right. And I kind of want to try to knock out like the super obvious one. So I don't think this is ever going to happen, but I don't want to just be like, oh, Quinn Hughes, Norris again. So I'm going to go with JT Miller wins the Selke.
You have JT Miller winning the Selke.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't love the pick, but again, I'm not just going to be the person who says, "Oh, Quinn Hughes, Norris again." Like,
no, but
trying to switch it up.
He wouldn't even have been my first pick on the team for a Selke.
You can go Pettersson, yeah. If you can't go wrong with just if you're picking Selke, either one of those two.
Yeah, it's also just crazy because, you know, JT Miller, not only was he bad defensively just a few years ago, he was notoriously bad. Like he was he was the notorious BAD. Like he was costing them games single-handedly at times because of his defensive play. The fact that his scoring has only improved while his defensive plays got so much better is absolutely mind-blowing.
And it says a lot for the Canucks. I'm pretty sure both Pettersson and Miller had a couple Selke votes last year.
I definitely think they did, yeah.
So that's pretty nice to have two, your top two centers both putting up points the way they do, and they're getting Selke votes. Like, that's nice. That's really nice to have.
Yeah.
All right, who are you picking? What you got?
Couple of ways you could go with it. I think it's safe to say that Quinn Hughes for the Norris is a very obvious answer, and I mean that's my answer for what is most likely to happen. It just seems like it has to be the odds-on favorite, right? But
100%.
In the spirit of not just picking the reigning Norris winner, I'm going to say Thatcher Demko for the Vezina Trophy. We know he can play at that level, and we know he can play for long stretches as the starter at a time. He had the injury this year, but
he was up there with Hellebuck for a good chunk of the season too.
It
came down to when we were talking about the Vezina, and we was basically like, all right, Hellebuck and Demko, like it's gonna be one of them.
It was pretty much just if Hellebuck falls off a cliff, it's Demko's to lose.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Demko came in second for.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Either way, he was a finalist. He was a finalist. Either way, so top three.
Yeah,
and that's a very good pick there, Demko for the Vezina.
Yeah, so they honestly have a really good chance at both Hughes and Demko winning those trophies respectively, and honestly, either Miller or Pettersson winning the Selke. Would it be my first pick in the league? No. Would I be shocked? Also, no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
if you told me 5 years ago Miller would be winning a Selke, I would have told you hell froze over. But
that'd
be the best place to play hockey in hell. All
right, so that wraps up everything we got for the Canucks here. We both have Canucks winning or making the playoffs. I don't know if they're fucking winning anything, but making the playoffs. And then I went with Miller for Selke. Braden, you got Demko for Vezina. So that's everything for the Canucks. And on to Buffalo. Braden, where do you want to start here with the Buffalo Sabres? Playoff legend Buffalo Sabres in recent years.
So
some would say.
As a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, for what I've been doing for all of these previews is I open a bunch of tabs. I open their Puckpedia page. After looking at how good it is, I also have the Buffalo Sabres cap wages open right now. I have their daily face-off line projections. I have the hockey reference page open that shows their individual player stats from last year. And then I just have the overall NHL standings that has all the team stats, base team stats, wins, losses, etc. that I can find there. For the Buffalo Sabres, I also have one other one, and it's just a Google search. And it's just Buffalo Sabres playoff drought. And I've got a big thing in bold text from Google that just says 13 seasons.
It's been a while.
It's their identity.
It's been a while for them. Yeah.
It's their identity is we have to be the season that breaks this playoff drought. These
It's gotten
fans,
so
they
bad
still
to the
have fans, like,
yeah.
which is
Well,
kind of a little wild after what they've gone through. So
it's gotten to the point where like people like are like, oh, I forget about Columbus because they've always just they're so bad and just irrelevant. But it's like nobody feels that way with Buffalo because Buffalo's been so bad for so long that their playoff drought is basically what kind of still makes them relevant. Because
exactly.
when you're talking about Buffalo, you can't talk about Buffalo and not even think about or mention being like, oh, fuck, their playoff drought. Like, when's the last time they've been in the playoffs? How long have they just sucked?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but
Like
that's their
there's
identity. That's what they're known for right
yeah,
now.
like I know there's a high. I don't know maybe a team that would be like bad and irrelevant in the NFL, but like the Detroit Lions, everyone knows the Detroit Lions. They're the ones who eat shit all the time. Like they
Were
they
because now
were they
they're one
were,
of
but for a
the best in the league
long
for a
time.
long time. Yeah, even the Jets for quite a while
Yeah. You
was
know
like
what? The Florida Panthers,
bad.
up until 4 or 5 years
Yeah,
ago,
yeah,
they weren't even ever anyone's first team to say they suck because people just forget they existed. It
yeah,
was always, oh yeah, the Hurricanes and the Sabres have been bad for a long time. You don't even remember them.
yeah,
Uh
yeah. Exactly.
but this team's identity is we are going to be the ones who turn around. This is clearly the best roster. Like they've been out for 13 seasons, clearly the best roster they've had in that time frame.
Yeah,
Right now, they also brought in Lindy Ruff. This is his second stint as a head coach with the Buffalo Sabres. They brought him in the offseason, so he was with the New Jersey Devils last year. So hopefully he can kind of help turn them around as well. But yeah, this team does look primed to make that push, but the East is an absolute dogfight. So we'll see
tough.
if they can make it happen.
It's
Um,
tough.
they do have $8.44 million in projected cap space. They've got all of their draft picks for the next 3 years, with an additional fourth and two additional sevenths in this upcoming draft. So, they're not missing anything at the very least. And they do have the Jeff Skinner buyout, which get isn't much this year, but the 2 years after that, it goes up to 4.4 mil and then 6.4 mil. So
Yeah.
that could be rough for them in the future. But uh, as it stands right now, they've they've got a little bit of cap space, so they could do something. Doesn't look
The
like they
only
have any major guys they need to
the only guy they got to sign
sign.
is Peyton Krebs, and I mean, still a good young player, but like you're not having to shell out a lot of money
Yeah, and
to bring
eight
him back.
they got a little more than 8.4 million cap space, so they might not be done with their offseason.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if it's like they just take that cap space into next season and you know just hold on to it in case they need it at any point, or if there's another move. But like looking at their team, I'm trying to figure out like what do they need to do? What can they do? What should they do?
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to tell because they're they're a good team on paper. They really don't put it together as much as you think they would on the ice, but they've got great contract structure with a lot of these guys. They got quite a few guys signed long term. They got Owen Power for the next 7 years at 8.35. That could be a steal. Darlene not coming in at a discount, but a relatively fair 11 mil per for the next 8 years. They got Tage Thompson for 6 years at 7.1. Dylan Cousin for 6 years at 7.1 as well. That one's a bit tougher, but I think that's still fine. The Tage Thompson was a massive discount. Like and Alex Tuck, who's been arguably their best player, I guess probably outside of Darlene, but arguably one of their best players over the past couple of seasons, making 4.75 for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
he's been just nothing but great for Buffalo ever since coming over.
yeah. And they signed Sam Lafferty in the offseason, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, they
So
signed yeah.
this past offseason, adding Ryan McLeod in that trade from Edmonton
Edmonton.
for Matthew Savoy, and then signing Sam Lafferty. Like those are two pretty good deals. McLeod's making 2.1 mil for this next year, and Sam Lafferty 2 mil even for the next 2 years. Like those are both pretty solid. And
There's two other solid ones that we haven't even talked about yet.
yeah, like honestly,
And they're
I like a
forwards.
lot of the stuff they're doing. It really just is, but it's Buffalo.
Yeah.
Can they make it? And
When
it's
you
a
when
tough
you
division, so they might not, even if they play really well.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? You bring in Ryan McLeod and Sam Lafferty, both really good, but then you also, you sign Jason Zucker, who he loves his 1 year deals and bouncing around right now. He can be a solid physical ad for them. And not only that, you make a deal and you move back a bit in the draft, but you get Beck Malenstein from Washington, who can just be a great solid fourth liner for you and create some chaos and whatnot. Like those are all additions that make them better from where they were last year, I would say.
Yeah, like blatant upgrades or improvements. And on top of that, all of their most important players, all of them are young.
Yeah,
Like
I
they,
think all of them, pretty much.
like looking at them, like in the top 10 guys on their team last year for scoring, um, they're all still with the team except for Jeff Skinner. So
Yeah,
take him out. The oldest guy is Alex Tuck at 27.
yeah.
But
Like
like
they're a
23,
young
22,
team.
22, 21, 18. Like this is a young team. Just this season happening and the offseason and them getting bigger, faster, stronger, improving their game. If they did nothing, they would have been a better team this year. But
Yeah,
they went out, they added like this team could be poised to break that playoff drought. Like, and I do think there's a very solid chance now that they name a new captain going into the season. They had a captain in Kyle Okposo last year. They traded him. Was it at the deadline or a little bit before?
at the deadline.
At the deadline, they traded him to the Panthers, and he obviously went and won a cup with them, which is nice to
Yeah, he
see
did.
after he spent so long with the team that couldn't sniff the playoffs. Um, but I do think they have several guys on this team that could easily slot in as a new captain. The most
Yeah,
obvious one being Rasmus Dahlin. Uh,
really.
uh, for my money, I mean, he was the first guy that they got to draft first overall in this recent rebuild. He's, in my eyes, head and shoulders their best player. He's only
Oh, 100%.
23,
He's their best player. I
and he just
personally,
signed for like I said, he's got 8 more years. He's locked
yeah,
in.
I think they might look to go with a guy like Alex Tuck.
And I could
Because
definitely see that.
Buffalo's just they're always the team, like they never, you know, just pluck their best player or something and be like, hey, you're the captain. Like they're always looking for
Wasn't Eichel their
other
captain?
things.
Was he? I actually don't know.
I guess Eichel, yeah, but I'm also thinking of like Calaposo, who's on the fourth line, and
I
obviously he's a
guess
great veteran, but they kind of give it to him like it. And even before that, like with Jason Pominville, like Pominville was great, but he was, you know,
they've never had a guy the quality of Darlene other than Eichel to
then
really
other
give
than
the
Eichel,
captaincy though.
yeah.
Like
I
they've
mean,
never really
yeah,
had that top guy to give it to. They had to go based on
Darlene makes a
vibes.
lot of sense, but if I had to pick a guy, I think Tuck would be the guy that they would go with,
I think
and
you
you
I
couldn't
think
go
you
wrong
asked
either
Darlene.
way.
I think you asked Darlene, do you really want this? Because if he does, then have it. But like I think there's a very real chance that Tuck would be a better captain. And that says nothing of Rasmus Dahlin. It's more Alex Tuck, 13 years out of the playoffs. And Alex Tuck was with an incredible, fun, flashy Vegas team. And this dude was all aboard going back to Buffalo. He's a hometown boy. He wants to be there. Like, Alex Tuck makes sense for every reason other than he's not their best player.
Yeah.
And he's one of them right now, still.
Mhm.
Like, he's not, he's not down on the fourth line like Okposo or anything. So I think
Yeah.
Alex Tuck would also be an incredible pick. But I think it's more likely they go with Dahlin. Well,
Hmm.
honestly, I don't even know if it's
Well,
more likely. I could
they,
just see it.
yeah, they could also just straight up go like Tage Thompson
They
or
could.
something. Like,
There's a
um,
lot of guys it could be.
one thing with Buffalo that I just want to point out as well is their over under on point totals for last season was set at 92.5. They were actually higher than the Canucks, and they finished the season with 84. So if you took the under with the Sabres, yeah, you made out once again because they've hit the under every year for the last, 10 plus years. So
Yeah. And
just throwing that in there that it's been tough for them, but things could be turning the corner for them pretty soon here, I think.
yeah. It's so hard to predict these next playoffs in the East because I look at the
Yeah,
teams and I'm like, okay, maybe one or two guys move, and then I have to think, okay, well the Devils finished second last in the Metro. That's not happening again.
exactly. You got to try and
So
figure out, yeah, who's going to be the teams coming out. Just as
I think
difficult as
five.
is picking who makes it in.
I think five teams make it from the Atlantic. The more and more I look at it,
The more I look, I'm kind of with you. I kind of do think so. Like as good as some teams are in the Metro, when I'm looking at the Atlantic, I'm like, I think there's quite a few teams that are for sure making it out of there, and a lot of other good teams in the Atlantic that aren't going to make it. It's
yeah,
it's it's the best division going into next season, I think.
yeah. I think the Central gives it a little run, but I think it's probably the Atlantic. It's a freaking mess over there. Other than the Canadians, and even the Canadians, you can make an argument for. Any team in the Atlantic could make the playoffs really this next year,
Yeah,
and they're all at the very least they're all really trying to make it happen. Um, but yeah, this team they've improved in the offseason, and Owen Power, first overall pick a few years ago, 21 years old. He's only going to get better. He already had 33 points last year in 76 games. He was a +8. Uh, they got Dylan Cousins, who's 22. JJ Paterka, who had underratedly, JJ Paterka, 22 years old, 28 goals, 50 points last year. He had
yeah,
himself a real nice year. Tage Thompson, 29 goals, 56 points in 71 games. We know he can do better than that. That one, maybe this is him regressing a bit to the mean. Maybe he's not that 100-point player that all of a sudden he broke out and everyone thought now he's one of the best in the league. Maybe he settles in more as a really good top 6 guy. Or maybe he goes back to that this year. It's kind of hard to say. But
yeah.
even
It's
Dahlin,
it's
23 years old,
tricky,
could take that next step.
and I kind of
They're
do
so
expect
young.
him to.
Zach Benson as well,
Like,
18 years old, 30 points.
yeah, and I
Like,
think we're really starting to see, Darlene kind of start to hit his stride a bit more now and get more comfortable, and he's kind of the guy now, right? Like he's relied
yeah,
on for a lot of the offense from the back end, and he can seems to just keep getting better and better uh, every year. So
yeah. I don't remember the last time I looked at a team's top scores from the year before, and everyone at the top is so young.
yeah, so
Like,
they can all take another step next year and be even better.
yeah,
Like it's
like I've been thinking of Alex Tuck as if he's like a veteran, like an older guy, at least 30. He's only 27, but he's definitely one of the older guys in that core because all the other guys are
yeah,
just so young. Yeah, I it's so hard to predict what will happen with this team because of that Atlantic and that Eastern Conference, but
yeah.
this team is poised to take that step. And their general manager has done everything in his power to put them in that position. They just got to go out and do it now.
Yeah, like this is the year now. Like if we get to the point and they miss the playoffs again, it's like, okay, what are we doing? Honestly, like I know it's a tough division, and the East is a dogfight, but like at some point, what more can they do there?
Yeah.
Like you've been going for 13 years. You thought you finally had the rebuild done when you got a guy like Eichel in, and then you got Dolly, and it's just like at some point, it has to work.
Did they ever surround Eichel with like a team really?
No, But
Like I,
they were
I
in the
genuinely don't
process of
know
it,
that.
because Eichel was kind of like the start of when they were kind of like, going through a new rebuild.
Yeah, that was them
Like
bottoming out.
he was the adding piece, and it's in a time where it's gonna take a while, but like it kept taking so long, and like I don't know if Buffalo wasn't actively trying to grab some bigger free agents, or if no one wanted to go there, but like they weren't able to bring in any huge major pieces, to kind of go with Eichel. Like they were kind of just like, we're waiting for our young guys to come up, and it's at the point now where it's like something's got to work for them, or like they're just in trouble then.
Yeah, and I think they've even tried to, give themselves as much insurance next year as possible. Ukko Pekka Luukkonen is their goalie, being the starter. Obviously, I think they want Devin Levi to start playing more
At some
NHL
point.
games, start making that transition a little bit. But in case he's not ready, they brought in James Reimer on a 1-year, $1 million contract. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that for him. The Ryan Minister of Defense, he's just always been solid.
Yeah.
I'll be
He's not
interested to
gonna
see.
hurt him.
Yeah, well, especially at 1 mil for 1 year when they've got 8.4 mil in cap space.
Yeah.
But yeah, all they've got to do left of the offseason is sign Peyton Krebs to a contract, and then from there, they could set themselves up for the future with a lot of these moves they could make. At this point, they could sign extensions to Bowen Byram, Jack Quinn, JJ Peterka. If they want to keep them around, Ryan McLeod, Jordan Greenway, Jason Zucker. I don't know those last three guys if those are near as important, but if they were to extend Quinn, Peterka, and Bowen Byram, that would set them up real nice if they could get a good deal on those contracts.
And they're gonna have to with that. Again, we talked about that Skinner buyout and how much it jumps up. Like you're gonna have to have some guys on good contracts to get you through that. Otherwise, it would suck if you lose a good young player like that, because you're stuck now with that $6 million when it gets to that point on a Jeff Skinner buyout.
Yeah, and I think there's no reason to think these guys aren't going to produce next year. I think they're gonna put up some real nice numbers, and I think they should want to put these contract negotiations to bed before these guys have another great season.
Yeah.
22 years old, JJ Peterka played all 82 games. I'm looking through. I don't know if anybody else on the team played all 82. I think he's the only guy to play all 82 for them last year. 28 goals, 50 points. Why wouldn't he improve this year?
Yeah. He's poised to have a breakout year, I think.
Yeah, like fourth on the team in points, only 9 points behind Alex Tuch, who was first. Like, I think, why would you not want to lock him up for 8 years?
Yeah.
Bowen Byram, like locking him up long term would just be incredible, because if they do, say they get him for 8 years, that would mean they have him for the next 9 years with an extension. Darlene for the next 8, and Owen Power for the next 7. Having those three locked up long term would be just insane. Like, I don't know the last time we saw a team with 3 defensemen of that quality locked up long term.
Yeah, not in quite a while.
Yeah, I think that would be absolutely massive for them. Zach Benson's going to break out huge as well, but
he's another young guy that's like, and that's the thing, is they have so many good young guys. It's like, if they all take a massive step, like this team is going to be even like better, like way better than it already looks right now, because it looks like a good team.
Yeah, and Zach Benson, like all these other guys are young, 23, 22, 22. Zach Benson's 18. 71 games for 30 points. He's going to be incredible. His first goal of his career was roofing it between the legs. Like,
he made the team right out of camp. Like, as a rookie, he was supposed to probably go back to the dub, and he made the team, and he was good. And so he's only going to get better. Like you said, he's 18, probably going to be 19 by, when the season starts going up. But like, again, 19 years old, he's got a full year of NHL experience already under his belt. He's 100% going to take that next step next year. And they probably I'd say minimum 50 points for him, honestly. Like
Yeah, I mean,
he's going to have a good year this year.
yeah,
He's going to be a big part of this team's success.
yeah, and they've had a lot of guys that they've wanted to take that step that just kind of haven't. That in the some of those guys like Matthew Savoy and the like. So him not only breaking out but doing it so young has been huge for them and their rebuild.
100%. I can't agree with you more on that.
And also, I just want to shout out Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who a lot of people seem to be relatively lukewarm on, but playing for the Sabres last year, who missed the playoffs, he played 54 games for them. He had a 910 save percentage.
He didn't hurt him last year.
Like, that's well above league average. I believe league average last year was a 901, I want to say.
Yeah, he definitely did not hurt. Like, he earned the contract that he got. 100%.
So they don't have a glaring weakness.
They really don't. That's a thing.
Like, they do if you're comparing them to, are they a championship team? But a team to make the playoffs, they don't really have a reason not to.
Solely relies on all of their young guys. Basically, their core, because they're all young guys, is having an even better year next year and becoming better players and coming in day one of training camp better than they were of game 82 last year.
Yeah.
Being an all-around better player. That's what they need. And if they can get that from, 66%, 75% of their good young guys, they are going to be a way better team than they were last year.
Yeah. Yeah, like, absolutely. It really does come down to that. And we'll move into the lineups here. For their first forward line, they have JJ Peterka and Alex Tuch, centered by Tage Thompson. It's pretty solid. A lot of it revolves on, like, it's so hard to win without that bona fide number one center, and we know Tage Thompson could be that guy. But
yeah,
we almost similar to Pettersson, like, there's times where it's like he's doing well, but could he be doing more for us?
Yeah.
And last year he really took a solid step back, unfortunately, with that 56 points in 71 games, well under a point per game.
Yeah, and that was a big part that hurt them was kind of, I'm not going to say regression, but just kind of a down year for Tage Thompson.
Yeah, he didn't look bad out there. He just wasn't doing the same stuff as he was the year before. But Alex Tuch's been great for them as well. Really solid guy, and JJ Peterka, who we were just saying, he scores goals, he puts up points, he's young. He's got he had a +10 last year. Like, I think he could easily stay on that top line for a long time for them. So I think they're going to want to lock him up ASAP.
And he's going to have I think he's another guy. He's going to have a good year. Like, him and Benson are kind of the two that I think we're going to see massive jumps from them. And they're going to become by the end of next year, we could be like, how we're talking about, like, when we think about the Buffalo Sabres up front, it's like, it's Tage Thompson, it's Dylan Cousins, it's Alex Tuch. By the end of next season, it could be like, we're talking about Tage Thompson, Peterka, and Benson. And then it's like, oh shit, we're not even talking about like Dylan Cousins and Tuch. It's like, holy shit, like, that just shows how good the Sabres team is. And hopefully by that point, when we're talking about that, we're talking about how fun it was to see Buffalo back in the playoffs, because we're all rooting for them. Like, nobody, you can't sit there and be like, oh, I just want to see the drought continue. Like, that's fucking rude. Like, we should all want to see Buffalo in the playoffs. It's
hard to hate on the guys who aren't doing super good. But yeah, we can keep moving in through the lineup here. We got, and I do think this is probably what they're going to go with for this starting, like, their opening lineup, but I don't think this is what they end the season with. Their second line is Jason Zucker and Jack Quinn, centered by Dylan Cousins. That's a pretty solid second line. I definitely think it starts the year like that, and by the end of the year, Zach Benson has pushed up into that second line left wing spot, and Zucker has gone down, especially with him being on that 1 year kind of rental contract. You know, Zach Benson's the future of the team. Zucker's here for 1 year, more if he wants to be, but like if Benson's producing, why wouldn't you move him up partway through the season? But I do think that's very solid, and I think this entire top nine is super solid. The third line being Zach Benson and Jordan Greenway, centered by Ryan McLeod. Uh, that's a very solid third line, and if Benson can be a guy who can really score and moves up, then a third line of Zucker, McLeod, and Greenway, that's great. Like that actually does scream playoff third line to me.
So
Like,
that's what I was gonna say, right? As I was looking at, I'm like, man, having a third line of Jason Zucker, Ryan McLeod, and Jordan Greenway would be sick. And I really like the opportunity of Zach Benson moving up in the lineup. The only thing, and if these guys are just come in, day one, like I said, and they've taken that next step and they're way better, it's not a worry. But you always got to be wary about like, if you're moving Zach Benson up and you're playing him and Quinn together, like those are two really young guys that are still kind of finding themselves in the league and finding their way. And that could be a little bit tough for them, being on the same line together. But again, it's like if they take that next step and they come in better than they were last year, more matured, more established, then that's a great second line. That's a really skilled second line, and that's behind a great first line. And then third line of Zucker, McLeod, and Greenway. That's a defensive. That's just a hit. Just a fun third line. Like that just screams a checking third line. And with Buffalo's top six, you don't need a scoring third line. Having a checking third line that each guy can still put up potentially,
I was gonna say like
35 points, but they're all plus 20s or something. Fuck, you take that all day.
A checking and scoring third line. Like that's one of those Swiss Army knife third lines that can really do it all. If they were to move Zach Benson up, that second line, that like not to be that guy who always makes it about his team, but that kind of has shades of the triplets line to me, from that 2015 Cup final run Tampa team. That had a young Nikita Kucherov, a young Tyler Johnson, and a young Andre Palat, who just all of a sudden their chemistry clicked, and out of nowhere, just they all exploded. And like honestly, guys like Zach Benson, Dylan Cousins, Jack Quinn, I could see that happening for them. I could see like them going out there and just being so good that the next year it's just Peterka, Thompson, Tuck on the second line, and you could just move that whole lot. You could just swap those whole two lines. Like if those guys can catch magic together, I see it a bit more for Quinn and Benson personally than Cousins. I'm not quite as high on Dylan Cousins as I am a lot of the other guys on this team, but at the same time, he's been playing there a bit longer, and just not on at a great team for a little bit longer. So maybe it's a bit harder to judge, but I absolutely love their top nine.
It's a solid top. It's a very solid top nine. And again, I don't know what's exactly going to happen here. But again, going into last year, Zach Benson wasn't expected to be on the team, but then he signed his ELC and he made the team. They just drafted Consta Hellenius. He just signed his ELC, which means he's coming over to North America. So he's either playing for the Buffalo Sabres next year or he's playing in the AHL. And you got to imagine he's going to get a look or two in some NHL games. And
what's his
we talked about him center, but I think he could also play wing. But like when we talked about Hellenius before the draft, he was the guy that he was going to go in that, he'd probably fall outside the top 10, but he was one of the more already established NHL players already. He doesn't have the ceiling that some other guys got, but he's got a very high floor, and he's one of the guys that can make the jump straight out of the draft and in. So I'm curious to see if we see Consta Hellenius find himself in here, and maybe he finds his way in the top six, and maybe Jordan Greenway, gets bumped down or something, because that's a realistic possibility as well.
Yeah, I definitely think it could be. And
Is a
honestly,
chance.
I see some very interesting stuff on their lineups and their cap wages here. So their fourth line is Beck Malenstein and Nick Aube-Kubel, centered by Sam Lafferty. That's a good fourth line, but it can also be improved. Um, Sam Lafferty is definitely, I would say, the best of those three. And Sam Lafferty, at least on cap wages, he's listed as a right winger, center, left winger. He
Yeah,
can
yeah,
just
he does it all. He's a Swiss
he'll
Army
do
knife.
whatever you need him to do. Um, and so that could be perfect. So if you want to take either Aube-Kubel or Malenstein out of the lineup for a Constantinius or someone else,
All Bay
you can
Kubel would come
move
out.
like you can move whoever you want into whatever spot and just have Lafferty fill up the gap. And
Yeah.
that's perfect for him. Like
Abe Kubel would for sure be the guy to come out just because they just traded for Malenstein and gave up like a second for him. And so you're not trading a second when there's lots of good prospects on the board just to grab a 13th forward type guy.
yeah.
But yeah, I really like the way that the forwards look for Buffalo right now, and I like the opportunity for more younger guys to come up that can provide value for them, just the same way Zach Benson did last year for him.
Yeah, and I think he's going to have a great year. Like I don't know who he was playing with before, but playing with Ryan McLeod and Jordan Greenway, that's pretty nice.
And
That's
there's
pretty
always the
nice.
potential for him to keep moving up the lineup as well. Like again, might start on the third line, but I don't expect him to end the year on the third line.
Yeah. Um.
And then the
What
defense.
we got the defense here.
My cat's screaming at me now. He wants to
Well,
hear about the
peace.
defense we got, so
Oh,
let's.
he loves a good defensive powerhouse. We're gonna give it to him.
It's what we're looking at. It's what we're looking at here with Buffalo, I think.
We got a real nice first defensive pairing in Bowen Byram and Rasmus Dahlin. That's so solid.
That's a very good top pair. Like that's
Like there's not a lot of teams that have two legitimate, at least an argument for two guys who are a top two defensemen. Like
I
guys
wouldn't
who
put Bo
should be
Environment at top
on a
two. I wouldn't say he's a top two defenseman yet.
not
Could still
yet,
get there,
but
but
I think he's on the cusp already. I think he has
I
the
would say
potential
Owen
to get there,
Power's
and he's
more there than Bo Byram is, though.
I I I have them about tied probably.
Because I give Bo Byram the more he's like obviously the more offensive upside, but like Owen Powers definitely got him beat on the defensive side.
Yeah,
And so when you've got Darlene, like you don't need Darlene to like obviously Darlene's going to be good in his own regardless, but you know I value the defenseman a bit more because like if it was like Bowen Byram was like on the Quinn Hughes level of offense and whatnot, I'd put him higher. But the fact that like his offense and whatnot isn't that much higher than where Owen Power's defense is that much higher
that's fair.
than his. So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards Byram. Like both these guys, I still don't think have reached their ceilings yet. They've still
No,
got a lot to grow and to develop into. But right now, I would say Bowen Byram's closer to being considered a top two than Byram. But still
that's
both
fair.
great. Still both great defensemen regardless. Like
Yeah, and like that top two pairing is great, and obviously that means that Owen Powers on the second D pair
which I think
with
he should be on the.
Henry Yokoharu,
I would
which
put
that'd be
Power on the
incredible.
first, and then Byram on the second, probably. Just to kind of space out that offense a bit more, then you can let Darlene kind of drive the offense from the back end on the first unit, and then Bowen Byram can easily do that on the second one.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if they have their handedness anywhere listed here because
They're all lefties. Darlene, Byram, Power, and Samuelson are all lefties. So one of them's going to
Samuelson
have
is
to
too.
play on
Okay.
the right side. Yeah. That's the thing that made the Byram one a bit of a head scratch. It's like you have Darlene Power locked in long term. You just locked in Samuelson long term, all left-handed defensemen, and then you brought in another one. So it's like, hey, now you're going to have to move someone to the right side, and it's going to be Darlene, kind of similar to Heiskanen with Dallas. How he, kind of has jumped over to the right side, so they could put him and Thomas Harley together, which the two of them made magic happen.
Would you say it's more important for an offensive defenseman, like a more offensive inclined defenseman, or a defensive defenseman, to be on the proper handedness side?
Sorry, what?
Like is it if you have to move one of them to their offside, who would you rather move, the defensive defenseman or the offensive defenseman?
It's usually the offensive defenseman.
They're the ones who will move over.
Either that or the better skater. Whoever's the better skater, and Buffalo's not going to have a defenseman better at skating than Dahlin. And similar to how with Dallas, they're not going to have a guy that's a better skater than Heiskanen.
Yeah,
more often than not, like if they're average on skating, I think you probably go with the more offensive guy. But like, if you've got one that's a better skater, you're putting the better skater on their offside.
Yeah, and so you know what? They probably end up going with this next year. If I had to guess, they're probably going with, I guess, just to round it out, their third defensive pairing that they have listed is Matthias Samuelsson and Connor Clifton. I see it probably going more as Owen Power on the first pair on the left side and Dahlin on the right side. And then the second pairing will probably be Samuelsson on the left and Byram on the right.
Nah, because I don't think you can. I don't think you want to roll out both your top two pairs having a guy on their offside. Because then your bottom, then you've got two righties there. So every defensive pair, you're guaranteed to have a guy playing his offside. And that was the problem, right? I was looking, I was like, okay, so now you just signed Lockton Samuelsson. He's kind of stuck there being on the bottom pair, like because you're not moving Owen Power or Bowen Byram to your third pair.
Yeah.
Based on what we've got here, the only thing I would do is I think I'd probably just swap Owen Power and Bowen Byram. And then you roll that being your,
Yeah, I guess you just roll it.
And then it still works out because
the third
Samuelson's going to get lots of penalty kill time. Bowen Byram's probably not going to sniff the penalty kill. So, Samuelsson, he's still going to get ice time. He's probably going to be on that maybe top penalty kill unit.
Yeah.
Or unless you're just going to keep rolling Owen Power and Dahlin just every game.
Just all the time.
But like Samuel, he's going to get penalty kill time and you know what? He's making more money than I think he's worth. So I don't think he can be complaining about ice time when they're overpaying him. Especially with how long. He got a long-term deal too, which was
6 years at
kind of wild.
$4.28 million.
So, but any way you slice it, Buffalo's they've got good defense right now. It's
great
the best it's looked in quite a while.
They put it together, but
exactly, that's 100%
guys back there. And then, like we said, goalies Ukko Pekka-Luukkonen's the starter. The backup's probably James Reimer to start the year. We'll see what Devin Levi does. Maybe he impresses and takes that out of the gate, or works his way up at some point. But
we could see a battle here for what's going to be the case for Buffalo's seventh defense. And they got Ryan Johnson, who's 23. He's still on his ELC. He's looking to make that jump. I think he was former first round pick. They grabbed Dennis Gilbert from Calgary. He's kind of always just last couple years been a seventh defenseman who can be physical and fight. And then they have your boy on defense, Jack Rathbone. So there's going to be some competition there for getting that seventh defenseman spot for the Sabres. And then even up front, like we talked about.
They've even got who's this? Jacob Bryson?
Oh, actually they do. Yeah, they still got Jacob Bryson. Like there's competition there. And that's what the Sabres need. Right? Like they need competition. They need to get something going. We talked about how good the forwards are. We talked about Konsta Helenius. That's not even mentioning Isaac Rosen, former first round pick, 21 years old. Yuri Kulich, former first round pick, 20 years old. Noah Ostlund, former first round pick, 20 years old. Like they have, and that's why they're able to move out of Matt Savoy. Because you've got 4 former first round pick, all guys that are looking to make the jump coming up this year. They have a lot of competition going into training camp in preseason. And that's something they haven't had in a while. So I'm liking the way that it's looking for Buffalo right now.
Yeah. Yeah. The
I
only
really
thing
like
to
it.
not like right now is the division they're in, really. Like,
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, right? If I had to pick something I don't like about Buffalo, it's their division.
Yeah, their cap structure is great. Yeah, the only thing I would really hope for if I was a Sabres fan before the year started was get some of these guys extended and I guess see what you can do with that
Yeah.
8.4 mil in cap space.
Yeah, you hope Lindy Ruff can get the boys
And of
fired
course,
up and turn it over there.
get Peyton Krebs signed or traded, whatever you plan on doing with him.
Yeah, you got to figure something out with him now because we're getting near mid of August, so they got about a month and a little bit to get it figured out here.
He probably knocks Abe Kubel out of the lineup if he does get signed, but like there's not a ton of room for him here in Buffalo anymore. They've got a lot of guys coming up,
It's tough for him. Yeah.
So yeah, he might have to decide. Does he want out or does he just want to sign and maybe do a prove-it deal?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this team has. We're talking very positively about a team that had 0 30 goal scorers last year and 0 60 point scorers last year, but they have a ton of young talent and they've looked really good. One area of concern I have, just looking at their stats here, they need to make sure their guys know how to do faceoffs.
Yeah.
And I could be a bit off on this, but just looking at the stats, I'm seeing a lot of bad numbers on the faceoff dot. And they just have so many guys here, and not all of these guys are centermen, but a lot, all these guys I'm listing have at least 50 or more faceoffs, some of them up to like 500. But Alex Tuck, 40%, Tage Thompson, 43%, Dylan Cousins, 45%, Casey Middlestat, 47%, Jeff Skinner, 41%, Kyle Okposo, 47%. Why are they have a lot of freaking wingers taking like 200 faceoffs.
Center's got to stop getting kicked out of the circle.
Yeah, I guess that just comes with not being great at
You're trying to cheat and getting caught, and you're getting kicked out. Your wingers are coming in, and then they're losing.
Yeah. Zemgus Gurgenson's was a 48% last year. That's a bit better. Peyton Krebs was a 46, but like all these guys I'm listing are lower than 50. Like they have a single guy who was 50 last year. Eric Robinson, who had 3 wins and 3 losses for a 50%.
Can beast.
Lucas Rusick won all 3 of his as a right winger. He's 100%. 5 for 5, Brett Murray, left winger. Massive.
Brett Murray had some good games. He had some good games.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. That is one area that they probably need to figure out a little bit. But you know what? If that's their biggest worry, you can sort that out. You can find something to work.
Honestly, it being an entire thing like that could since it's so consistent, that could easily be more of a coaching thing, and maybe Lindy Ruff will get on top of that, or he'll bring in a face-off specialist and be like, "Hey, teach these freaking bozos how to deal with the draw." Like,
yeah, he'll find a way, one way or another, to get that sorted out for him.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got on the Sabres here. I guess nothing left to do but ask, do you think the Buffalo Sabres are a playoff team?
Yes, I'm going with it. I've always been hesitant when everybody's like, "Oh, this is Buffalo's year." I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen anything yet to show like, okay, this is it. But you know what? After last year and how much I'm expecting their younger guys to take a jump, they have, not great goaltending, but solid enough. It's as solid as Stuart Skinner. And look at Edmonton. It can be done. I think the Buffalo Sabres sneak in a wild card spot. but I do see the
Yeah,
Buffalo
they're not winning the
Sabres
division, but
sneaking
and
in.
you know what? Even all those guys taking a step, all the ads, uh, last season they were a +2. Again,
Yeah.
Washington made it into the playoffs with a -37. They were 39 goals better than Washington in the regular season last year.
Yeah.
So, you know, you just if you can get those goals in the right games, I'm going to say the Buffalo Sabres are a playoff team. I think they are as well. I think they're going to leapfrog the Red Wings, who were a bit ahead of them in the standings last year. Last year they were 39, 37, and 6 for 84 points in total. The Sabres, and yeah, they made enough improvements. Like Washington made in with 91 points. I think they easily made 7 points worth of improvement.
Yeah, right. Like
I
I completely agree.
and I already have my Madman's prediction in of on our hot takes predictions video of Toronto missing the playoffs. So
Yeah.
in my headcanon, there's an extra spot open in the Atlantic. Yeah, I
All
think they're
right.
gonna make it.
All right. So the only thing left is award prediction. Again, never want to take the one that's like super obvious, but sometimes I think you just got to. And like this is one of those times. Rasmus Dahlin for getting his first Norris.
Yeah, it's
Like just looking, I don't see anything else that I can say and even try to make an argument for it.
I'm gonna look at one guy's numbers here
For any guy to
just to see.
win an individual award, like you could go with like maybe a Consta Hellenius for the Calder, but I think
But the
again,
Calder
I don't
race
think
is
he's going to
brutal
get the
too.
opportunity enough. First of all, and then yeah, with the other players in that class that's going to be fighting for it, I just don't see him being the one to come out on top because I don't see him getting the opportunities that a lot of these other guys are going to be getting for the entirety of next season.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, sometimes it's the common answer because it's the right answer. I'm going with Rasmus Dahlin for the Norris.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
think you
wanted
can
to
even
pick
make it.
something different, but like there's
Yeah.
nothing. There's
Yeah.
nothing.
You could make an argument if we're even including it for Lindy Ruff possibly getting the Jack Adams if they
If
do get into the playoffs.
yeah.
Uh
But we already
I
kind of axed that with Philly in the last one, so
yeah. And
but yeah,
I was kind
that
of
would be the most probably yeah, that one would be a very good one if we were including that for sure.
yeah. I was debating on maybe taking Tage Thompson um for the which is it? The Lady Bing for the nice guy trophy.
The
But
Pussy Award.
he had 43 penalty minutes last year, so even if his scoring does come back, uh yeah, he's just not
Too
going to be
many
a guy
too
scoring
many
for
too
them.
many Pims.
Um
All right. Well, that wraps up everything we got for
yeah.
the Vancouver Canucks, the Buffalo Sabres. We really hope you guys enjoyed. So much to the point that you guys stuck around to this point to where your favorite time we are picking our teams for next episode. Braden, I will give you the first pick
Oh,
for the next episode coming out Tuesday of next week. It will be Tuesday as long as we don't have any more flooding or storms or all that shit. So Braden, hit us with who you got.
all right.
Just kind of throwing you on the spot here, but I got to
No,
imagine
no.
you got one
I've
picked out that you've been eyeing up for weeks
I've
that you're
I've got
jonesing
two that
for.
I had been looking at, but I think I am gonna nail it down to this one here. Next week, I will be talking about the Utah Hockey Club.
What a pick! What a pick! What a pick! Yeah, that'll be a super fun one to do. So you're sitting out in the east right now. You're moving out west. I'm sitting in the west. Not only am I in the west, I'm in Canada. I'm staying in Canada, but I'm going out east. Toronto Maple Leafs. We're getting them out of the way. We're doing it.
Oh, the
I know there's
expansion team.
I know there's people out there that want to hear about Toronto, and we're gonna bring it to you.
Toronto and Utah. Yo, we're gonna do numbers on that one. It's gonna be
Yeah,
huge.
that's gonna be a fun one actually, because two two very, very different teams. Two teams with a lot of stories and history with them.
The team
Not
that's
good
going to start
history, but
the team that's going to start the year with Mitch Marner and the team that's going to end the season with Mitch Marner. Like,
yeah, the team that has Austin Matthews and the team that was going to get Austin Matthews if they didn't relocate. Like, it's a match made in heaven. It's a match made in heaven with those two teams. That's going to be a lot of fun. So you guys got a really, really good episode to look forward to on Tuesday next week. But that does wrap up
we got one little bit of news.
All right, we got one little.
We don't even have to talk about it. Just going to throw it out there. But congratulations to Oscar Klefbom, who announced his retirement.
He's been retired.
Yesterday.
He's been retired. We all knew he was never coming back. It's just official now.
Yeah, but he announced his retirement.
Yeah.
He's it's on his terms now. It's not people telling him he's done.
Yeah, that is true. That
whether it happened now, because he wanted to or not, but
but congrats to Klefbom. Promising young player, career cut short, but we wish you all the best in your futures outside of hockey or within hockey if there's more still for him to do off ice.
Yeah, but maybe he'll get in with the the player safety program or something like that, and he'll maybe work on that side. Like
where?
What?
Like what team?
Oh, I was thinking like for the league, like
for the league,
like in the Department of Player Safety kind of thing.
Well, I thought you were going to say Edmonton. I was going to be like, oh, what crime did he commit within the last year?
The way you said where, I figured you were trying to lead me to something.
I jumped up for the alley-oop, and you were too busy playing with yourself to throw the ball, and I just faceplant. I look like a jackass now. Yeah. The whole crowd is laughing at me.
Who up playing with the Klefbom?
Yeah. But yeah, that does wrap up everything we got for this episode. As always, thank you to everybody for tuning in once again. If you want to, if you feel so inclined, you probably don't, but who cares? We're going to shove it down your throat as always. You can check us out on any of our socials. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Dude, I'm preparing for Edmonton. I'm preparing to go there. We are on all those socials, SEU Hockey. Come check us out. Come say hi. Again, let us know what team you want to see, and we'll get to them. We're rolling through teams now. So if we haven't got to your team yet, let us know, and they're going to be next. We're doing it right now. They'll be next. So, Braden, you got anything before we pull the pin on this one?
Not really. I'm excited to do Utah though. This is a very different looking team, and it's also just a new team, which is always fun. And I also think their new owner is I think he's unhinged might not be the right word, but this dude wants to show up and make a massive impact and fix the damage that the Coyotes management kind of did with the fan base and with the league and everything. I think this dude is borderline desperate just to have his team be beloved. And I don't think they're done in this offseason, or at least before the season starts. And I think he's definitely going to be willing to do some crazy stuff.
Yeah, things are looking bright for Utah for sure. I don't know about Toronto, but if you guys want to know what we think about Toronto, you guys can do so in the next episode. Thank you once again, and we will see you guys Tuesday next week.